Hi, geographers. Welcome to topic 6.1, the origin and influences of urbanization. My name is Miss Cosgrove, and I teach AP Human Geography at Coral Gables Senior High School in sunny Miami, Florida. So what will we learn today? One of the things that we're going to talk about is how site and situation can influence where and how a city develops. Do you all remember site and situation factors? Site factors include the climate, availability of water, soil quality, like is it fertile, and other natural resources. Situation factors, these are the connections between one site and another site. For example, is it on a river, which will encourage more trading opportunities? Let's look at this image here. This is an image of the Nile River Valley. So, how do you think site influenced how the Nile River Valley civilization? The Nile River develops along a river, and some of these site factors were fresh water, food, fertile soil. The soil surrounding it was very fertile for farming. The climate wasn't too hot, too cold, it was temperate. And lastly, the desert. The Sahara Desert borders the Nile River, and so it provided a natural defense. And so it made it very easy for the civilization to develop here. What about situation? How can situation influence where and how a city develops? Remember, situation factors are the connections between one place and another. Many cities have developed along trade routes, rivers and ports make trade easier, and later on, maybe a transportation line like a railroad. Let's look at this image here. This is an image of Istanbul today, but formerly Constantinople. So, what do you think some of those situation factors would have been? Well, the location of Constantinople was a gateway city. Constantinople is a gateway between two continents, Europe and Asia. It's a gateway between two seas, the Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea. So these situational factors enabled Constantinople to become a very, very, very important commercial center and also an important city on the Silk Road. Many cities develop along transportation and trade routes. But changes in the way we transport can change a city. Waterways, railroads, air, ports, any of these changes can encourage development of a city or can discourage development. Let's look at this here. This is the port of New York and New Jersey. It is one of the busiest ports on the eastern coast of the United States. And why is that? That is because it has incredible transportation infrastructure that supports it. So not only do you have this port, but you have the infrastructure that supports the port. So you have cargo and container terminals. You have the proximity to railways. You have proximity to Newark International Airport. So this is vital infrastructure that helps support trade that's coming in from the port of New York and New Jersey. Changes in any of these processes will initiate and drive urbanization and suburbanization. So let's look at some of these processes: transportation, communication, population growth, migration, economic development, and even government policies. Any of these things can really drive urbanization and suburbanization. Let's look at some of the changes in transportation and communication. How can a city grow or decline if access to these things change? So if you look way back when we used streetcars to get around, Most people would live by the city center. But once we had more access to cars and highways were being built, people could move farther away from the city center, and that might have led to a decline in the population of a city. People moved out to suburbs, and businesses could move away from city centers too. If we think about changes in communication, and when we first had the telephone and landlines, who has that anymore? Do any of you have a landline? But once we had telephones, this gave us more options. You didn't necessarily have to walk into a business to find your good or to place your order. You could maybe just call in your order. And then cell phones and the internet have completely changed our world. So no longer do you have to be in one place. You can be international and someone can just order their product or their good that they would like online. And with 5G technology, who knows, it could be limitless. If we look at this here, these are all of the things that make cities attractive, from being transportation hubs, airline hubs, to having connectivity with the internet, having public transportation and good infrastructure with our roadways. This encourages people to move to the cities. So we see that migration will encourage cities to get bigger. People move from rural areas into cities for better opportunities, economic opportunities, educational opportunities, services. If we look at this here, here's a picture of one of the largest favelas in right outside of Rio de Janeiro. And so this is the favela of Rocinha. And we can see that it is a very large favela developing on the outskirts of a city. And at some point, this might even connect into the city. A city's economic function could have impact on urbanization too. If a city is a manufacturing city or a tourist city, like my city, Miami is, it's based on tourism. A city that provides services like financial services, or if your city's function is governmental or political, like Washington, D.C. All of these things have impacts. If you wanted to do a case study and you wanted to look up Detroit, the rise, fall, and now renewal of Detroit, Motown, the Motor City, um, you should probably look up that as a case study, how it went from this manufacturing city and to its fall, and now to Detroit really encountering a lot of urban renewal thanks to a private investor. Government policies also impact urbanization, and state and local governments want businesses to relocate or stay in their cities. Businesses will hire people, so businesses will act as a tax base. So, what can cities do to make their city most attractive? Well, they make sure that it's a great place to live. They want there to be good schools, a safe environment, make sure that you have, fire, fire rescue, public safety things, good entertainment options, accessible transportation. And what can a state or local government do to encourage a business to stay or relocate? They might offer cash incentives, rebates, tax credits. And I encourage you to research the Amazon headquarter 2, the Amazon HQ2 bids. And there were several cities in North America that were competing to become Amazon's second headquarter location. Cities were offering billions of dollars in subsidies and tax breaks and other incentives to bring Amazon to their city. You should look up what Amazon required a city to have before they could even place a bid. It's pretty interesting. So let's practice. Let's look at a question here. Locational advantages of early cities. Locational advantages important to the development of the earliest cities included availability of good harbors for large ships, productive agricultural land and defensible sites, temperate climate and proximity to coal mines, good connections by road and canals, and proximity to manufacturing areas. What do you think the best answer would be? Remember, this is asking locational advantages important to the development of the earliest cities. So I don't think that coal mines or manufacturing areas would really be a factor there. So you could do some elimination right away. Let's look to see what the answer would be. Productive agricultural land and defensible sites. Remember, these were some of the site factors that we talked about earlier. So this is really asking you, what is the best site for some of our earliest cities? And the answer was productive agricultural land and defensible sites. So what should we take away from all of this? We should know that site and situation influence where cities will develop. We should also know that changes in transportation, communication, population growth, migration, economic development, and government policies can also influence urbanization. Thank you so much for joining me. Hi there, geographers. Welcome to topic 6.3, and we're going to be looking at cities and globalization. What will we learn today? So we're going to talk about world cities functioning at the top of the urban hierarchy. What is a world city, you might ask? So a world city is one of those cities that has influence not just within its region, but around the world. We also call these global cities. And so what are some of the global cities or the world cities? New York, London, Paris, and Tokyo. And so those four cities are really at the top of this urban hierarchy. They are not only centers of the financial world, they have stock exchanges, they have banking institutions, but they are also centers for multinational company corporate headquarters. They have international organizations headquartered there, like the United Nations, and they're also cultural meccas, whether in the entertainment industry or the fashion industry. These cities really sit on top. They are all connected. They are all connected, and these cities drive globalization. Globalization operates on a really large scale, and it really leaves very few people unaffected, even in hard to reach areas. I'm sure you all have seen pictures of hard to reach areas. Maybe some of the indigenous groups in the Amazon rainforest who are wearing Nike t-shirts. So globalization really operates on a very large scale. Multinational corporations, they like to cluster in world cities because they create vast networks to facilitate their services. So what are some of these networks? These are all things that you've heard before. These networks are manufacturing and trading networks. They are transportation networks. They are banking networks. And they're also communications networks. These cities spread their culture to other areas. And if we look at this image over here on the right, what are the types of networks you can see in this image? How many multinational corporations do you notice in Times Square? And what other cities might have some of the same fashion, entertainment, and same financial industries as this image of Times Square. You can put me on pause and think about it and take any notes that you might notice in that image. So here's a larger image of Times Square and just some of the things that I might pick out just glancing at it really quickly. I can see Disney, which is a multinational corporation, and we have Disney movies and Disney princesses all over the globe. If I look over on the left, I see a Bank of America sign. Bank of America has a presence all over the world too. Bank of America has a presence in 35 different countries. If you go and look straight back toward the center of that image, you see Coca Cola. And so, Coca Cola, that multinational corporation, they also have um, networks on almost every single continent, not Antarctica. So, here we have another image. This is Shibuya Crossing, and this is in Tokyo, Japan. But it looks very similar to Times Square. So, what are some of the things that you notice that might be the same or similar to the image that we just saw? Here is another comparison. And so maybe you can see it a little bit easier here. But what similarities and connections do you notice between Times Square, New York City, and Shibuya Crossing in Tokyo? So, one of the things that I notice is that we have in the Shibuya Crossing, we have a Starbucks. We have Starbucks coffee. We have fashion. We have a Forever 21. Um, Girls, look in the back. We've got an H&M. And we also have a little logo in the center of Visa. So, our banking institutions. These cities, they really function at the top of that urban hierarchy, and they all have similarities between them all. New York City is home to the New York Stock Exchange. It's also the home of the headquarters of the United Nations, which you can see on the image here to your right. So these cities are really connected by links. They mediate global processes. These links can include media hubs, the financial markets and services, entertainment centers. These cities can provide a labor force. They are hubs of innovation and creativity. They really have the technological infrastructure to make them important. And they collaborate with each other to try to solve problems that each one of those cities face. So it might be pollution or inequalities. It might be improving infrastructure. And if you look at this image here over to your right, you see that this is a display of some of the stock exchanges. You've got the Stock Exchange of Tokyo, of New York, the UK, London. So, really, all of these global cities, these world cities, all are connected. They're all very similar. Let's look at a couple questions and practice. Let's look at practice number one. I'll let you read this one on your own. And what do you think the question will be? And we can pause here and you guys can take your time. So the answer was E. And the new global economy, an increasing proportion of influential financial decisions are being made where? In major corporate centers like New York, London, and Tokyo. Important financial decisions aren't going to be made in the informal sector. They're not going to be made in small towns where fax machines are used. They're not going to be made in the field. And they're not going to be made in national capitals because of the importance of the nation state. Remember, these are world cities. They are hubs of multinational corporations. They are important banking services here. And so the major corporate centers like New York, London, and Tokyo would be the best answer. Let's look at another one too. I'll let you read this one on your own, and then we'll see what the answer is. So, this question was really dealing with global cities spreading their influence, purchasing power, and culture, fashion. So, which of the geographical processes best explains the impact on consumers? And the answer was C. World cities have market effects on globalized urban culture. Central business districts becoming increasingly commercialized? That would be a no. Push and pull factors affecting flows of urban migrants? That would be a no. Urban populations correlated as described by the rank size rule? That would be a no. And uneven results or uneven development results from the dominance of primate cities? That one doesn't really apply either. So the best answer was that world cities have market effects on globalized urban culture. So, what should we take away from all of this? We should know that world cities function at the very top of the world's urban hierarchy. They drive globalization through economics, through politics, but also through social, cultural, and environmental issues. World cities are very influential, not only around their regions, but also around the globe. They are connected, they are all connected to each other. And these connections can include communications like media organizations, whether it's CNN or Fox News or the BBC. They are connected by financial industries like the stock markets, government organizations like the United Nations, our entertainment and fashion industries, manufacturing and trade, and also our transportation networks. So I hope that you have learned